Ohio State is a 14-point favorite in its third Big Ten game of the season and second on the road when they travel to Champaign to play the number 17 Illinois in the number 1, number 17 matchup. These are our game picks. Andrew, we'll start with you. What's your game score for Ohio State versus Illinois?
Ohio State 35, Illinois 10. I think Ohio State kind of rolls in this one, and I think we are going under again. I think Ohio State's idea of what they've done this season is to kind of play it slow. I think they might do that on the road again. I did mention in one of our videos that they might be accidentally explosive. I think this might be one of those things where, you can diagram a bunch of 6-yard outs or a bunch of run plays or whatever. And one of these times, Carnell just might take a slant 60 yards of the house and he might just put you up and you go, oh, we weren't anticipating being up 7-0 this early. We were kind of, being a little more methodical with it. We were being intentional with it, but well, here we are. I just think you might have some of those. I think Illinois, their secondary is just, I don't know. And I don't really see how it matches up to Ohio State's receiving core. Presuming Julian Sayin takes care of the football, I think that is how, Ohio State kind of gets into trouble this year, is if Ohio State doesn't take care of the ball, Sayin doesn't take care of the ball. But yeah, I think Ohio State rolls. I think maybe this is a game where it's 24-10 in the third quarter, so it's not technically over. If it's 21-7 at halftime, something like that, it's not over, quote unquote. Ohio State's still got a game to play, but I just think over time, especially in these matchups, Illinois is a really solid football team. Illinois is probably going to win like 8 games, 9 games this year. I think they're really solid. It's just Ohio State just long term has that talent, and I think this is going to be one of those games to where you just see that kind of pop up immediately. And even if Ohio State doesn't blow the doors off of them like Indiana did, I think we are going to reach a point to where Ohio State wins fairly comfortably. So 35-10, Ohio State covers. I don't think you really have to sweat the cover too much. I do think you probably have to sweat the under a little bit, but I am going under yet again.
So Andrew has Ohio State giving up its third touchdown of the year. Is that in the red zone?
No.
Ooh.
Illinois hits a bomb.
Illinois hits a bomb. Somebody messed up in the backhand. Ohio State, get it together, man. Stefan, what's your game score?
I've got Ohio State winning this game 42-14, so I think they're going to give up 2 touchdowns, and I think one of those is going to be in the red zone. Terrifying, I know. I think Illinois with Luke Altmaier and his experience, I talked about that a bit on our latest episode of Buckeye Talk. I think that has some value against Ohio State's defense as opposed to some of the younger guys that they played this year. But I don't know when those touchdowns are going to come. Maybe they're late in garbage time. Maybe they get one early and make it 7-0 or something like that to surprise people. But I'm not overly impressed with this Illinois defense. I gave Illinois a lot of credit for the way they bounced back from the Indiana game with how they played against USC and how they played against Purdue, and they won those games. Their defense was not impressive in either of those games. And the USC offense is pretty good. Purdue's offense has had moments that they looked okay against Notre Dame earlier this year. But this Ohio State offense is a whole nother beast. And I don't know how this Illinois secondary can slow them down. I will admit, I said something similar going into the Washington game where I was like, I don't know how this Washington secondary can match up. I think I was right. Ohio State just approached the game differently than I thought they were going to. I think that there are no more – it's no longer – guardrails up for Julian Sayin. He has shown you he can win on the road. He has shown you that he can play against Big Ten opponents and against teams like Texas. He has shown that he can do it. I think last week's Minnesota game was, okay, here's a safe environment to test it out in and put a lot on Julian Sayin's plate. I think it's full go from here on out. I think it's full go for Ohio State's offense against Illinois and Wisconsin to set up it going into the bye week and then having Penn State on the other side. And then all that leading into the Michigan game, of course. Now it's all engines go for Ohio State's offense. It's time to start putting everything on Julian Sayin's plate, regardless of the opponent or the environment or whatever it may be. So, Illinois, I like their offense. I like Luke Altmaier. I think they're maybe the first team to give Ohio State's defense some fits. All that does is lead to 14 points. That's okay. I trust Ohio State to win most points where they limit teams to 14. Most games when they limit teams to 14 points. I don't see how this Illinois defense can do anything against this Ohio State offense. And while I do like Illinois' offense, I don't think they can do nearly enough against this Ohio State defense. So Ohio State rolls 42-14. I'll take Ohio State to cover, and I'll take the over.
So, for those of you watching this short game predictions video on YouTube, we just had a whole conversation on the full podcast on Buckeye Talk. Go check that out about what we think it looks like for Illinois to keep this close or even pull off an upset in this game. And Stefan and Andrew both brought up the idea of Illinois being explosive. And I'm pretty positive they're both talking about in the passing game, not then necessarily the run game with Luke Altmaier making some things pop. I agree. The problem is I do not think Illinois is set up to do that in this game because their offensive line is too shaky. And if you're going to ask Luke Altmaier to drop back a bunch of times and try to be explosive, well, explosive plays take time, unless you think that Ohio State is going to forget how to tackle all of a sudden. So long developing plays take time to develop, and I can just see Caden Curry living in the backfield, Kenyatta Jackson, if he plays, living in the backfield, Caden McDowell living in the backfield, Taiwan Malone, Will Smith Jr., Edric Houston is starting to look even better. Arvell Reese, hey, that guy who is not going to be here for much longer. Sonny Styles, maybe they send Caleb Downs on some blitzes, but it's just, I don't know if Illinois is equipped to do the thing that they need to do to keep this close or maybe even pull an upset off. While on the other end of that spectrum, Stefan, you're talking about their defense. Illinois is dead last in the Big Ten in passing yards allowed per game, and they're 113th in passing yards allowed per game at 252.3. They're also 7.3 yards per attempt, so that's a little bit lower. So it's more of a overall counting numbers than it is an efficiency number with them, which you kind of, it's somewhere in the middle of them or where they are. But remember back in 2021 when C.J. Stroud lit up Michigan State like a Christmas tree? And in hindsight, it was like, oh, yeah, of course he did that. This passing offense is amazing, and Michigan State can't cover anybody. You're right, Stefan. I understand Ryan Day keeps saying don't throw out the Indiana game, and that is a mindset, culturistic approach it the right way. We should not be throwing out the Indiana game because Ohio State's receivers are better than Indiana's receivers. They have a quality core. They don't have two dudes who are going to be wide receiver ones in the next 24 months on their team, and a quarterback who is completing 80% of his passes and can layer any throw you want him to layer. And it's unfortunate that Illinois' weaknesses and their deficiencies, there just so happen to be two teams who I think are playoff bound on their schedule, who that's their strength on offense. And so what do you do with that, right? You can't stop the pass. Indiana wants to throw the ball. Ohio State can do whatever it wants when it throws the ball through the air. And so because of that, I don't think they can score touchdowns. I do think they can score field goals, though, and put together some drives like we've seen some other teams too. So I went 42-6, taking the over, and I'm taking Ohio State to cover. And it's not about Illinois being bad. I don't think they are a bad team because they lost. This is a funny sentence. They lost 63-10 against Indiana, and then they lost 42-6 against Ohio State. I do not think they are as bad as the scores and their losses will indicate. They just so happen to be bad in the areas that these elite football teams are God level in. And so it leads to lopsided scores, especially when it feels like they've unlocked Julian Sand. I don't think they're putting that back in Pandora's box anytime soon. So we've got 3 covers, 2 overs, and an under. Andrew has been better in the over-under category significantly than Stefan and I, but we're undefeated in our game picks, and he's 4-1, so it still balances itself out. Those are our game picks for Ohio State, Illinois on Saturday in Champaign. We'll take a quick break here, and then we'll close out with some other games, because this is like a sleeper banger of a week of college football. Who would have thought coming into the season this would be a great week, but here we are. We'll run through some of those games and why they matter to Ohio State after the break here on